Right. The podcast that uncovers the origin stories of some of the biggest names in sports, media, entertainment, and so much more. Nick Durst here with Joe Calabrese. And Joe, we welcome somebody to the show today who is an entertainer and recently an author as well.
She is. She's worked in comedy. She's worked in theater. Most recently, she's blown up on TikTok and kind of gotten to figure out how to use social media. We're very, very happy to have her on. She's an author as well. This is the part where you hold up the book if you have it, but you could buy her books on Amazon. She's also the writer of, there you go, the Book of Annie, Bargain Junkie, Living the Good Life on the Cheap. So if you want to check that out on Amazon as well. She is actress. She's been on Seinfeld, so we get to pick her brain about that. But we welcome Annie Korzen to the show. Annie, hope that intro was nice for you. Welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Bargain Junkie, by the way, is no longer available. I can't figure out how to get it on Amazon. Amazon and I
Oh,
have
it's not?
sometimes
Okay.
we sometimes have communication problems. Has that ever happened to any of you or your listeners, I wonder?
Well, we've had
Perhaps.
communication problems, but we've never written a book and had the audio book previously available on Amazon that had it taken down. So when that happens, hopefully someday we'll know who to call.
Right.
So let's get started. You're from New York City, just like Nick and I. We're from Staten Island, though, even though I was born in Brooklyn, but you grew up in the Bronx.
I grew up in the Bronx.
You grew up in the
Yes.
Bronx. So how was it like growing up in the Bronx? Where are you now? And how often do you come back? And how do you think New York City has changed from when you were growing up?
Well, I grew up in the Bronx. I hated it. What I didn't like in the Bronx was that everybody was the same. The mantra, I grew up in a kind of a blue collar working class Jewish immigrant section, and the motto there among everybody was stick with your own kind. And I'm very grateful that I paid no attention to that, because I find it's one of the things I talk about in my book. The more you reach out to the other kind, the more your life gets enriched. So I hated the Bronx. I moved to Manhattan. I've always loved Manhattan. I still do. For me, Manhattan is still my dream place in the world. And we always lived on the Upper West Side. But now I've landed in LA, which is really hard for a person like me to adjust to. I have made some kind of adjustment, but I'm not a car person. Everything here closes at 9:30. The bagels, are you ready for this? The bagels have blueberries. It's not really what I call a city. But I've created a good life for myself. The sad thing is, I don't know if I could move back to the New York that I love, because I couldn't afford it.
Yeah, it's also like a really disgusting place to be. So I don't know if anybody, I know anybody wants to live in New York except people who are not from New York. That's the people who live in New York. It's awful, Joe. You go to Manhattan more frequently than me. I avoid it as much as I can. It's just
Really?
disgusting.
I love it. I love Central Park and Riverside Park.
Mm.
I love the Village, Chinatown, and I love theater. My idea of a good time is to go to a Broadway musical. That's what I
Yes.
love more than anything. So I'm still, New York is still magic to me. It's still magic. You don't share that. I guess we can't get married. I'm sorry. The engagement is off.
After commuting to Manhattan 5 days a week for many years for work, if I
Oh,
have to step foot in Manhattan again, I'd be totally fine. But you're right, it's very expensive. Everything's expensive. It's
that's
really
the
not
problem.
affordable. So,
That's the problem.
I'll just be I'll be out of outer borough for now, and I'll live my life. And not
Yeah.
being in Manhattan doesn't impact me. I'd like to come out to the West Coast one day though, and see what it's all about. I know Joe's been out there a few times,
I
and
loved Los
enjoys it.
Angeles. Have family out there.
You
One of my best
do.
friends and his fiance, they were in West Hollywood. Now they're in Malibu. But I mean, I love California. Like they
So they
call
got rich.
West Coast,
Your
best
friends
coast,
got,
rivers, and
did your
yeah, well,
friends get rich?
Yeah,
uh,
I got some.
yeah, they have prominent media jobs. So even though it's like they don't make like super like big time money, they make enough to live comfortably where they're.
Yeah, well, Malibu doesn't have poor people.
Sure.
So they don't allow them. Malibu doesn't allow poor people.
Mm. So,
So,
so Annie, for you, what were your career aspirations when you were younger and growing up, and how did that maybe change when you attended Bard College, and how did you ultimately there, like decide what you wanted to pursue?
I'm a very late bloomer. I'm very old, by the way. I'm older than mud. I just turned 85
God bless.
and I have over 400,000 fans on TikTok, which just happened in the last couple of years. So my whole story is so crazy. I never expected this. When I was little, I used to love movies. I dreamed about being a movie star, but I ended up being a piano teacher. It wasn't, I started acting late in life and I started writing even later. So all of my success, how should I say it? I'm busier now than I ever have been. I think there's something new going on in this country. Maybe it started with Betty White, that people want to hear from older women. They
Interesting.
finally discovered that we've got experience, that we've got wisdom, that we know how to live life. We know about marriage and dating and motherhood and thrifting and life. So I've traveled. I've done a lot in my life. And for the first time in my life, I feel that my opinions are being valued. And that's what I put into the book, The Book of Annie. I have to read the whole title. The Book of Annie, Humor, Heart, and Chutzpah from an Accidental Influencer. So I didn't plan to become a TikTok star. This is the last thing I ever had in mind. It just happened accidentally because of a young friend. And here we are.
So let me ask you a question. You started as an actress writer in New York Off-Broadway theater, right? And you just mentioned Betty White. So I want to ask you, when you first broke into the industry, when you first started gaining momentum, uh, who were your influences then? Who did you try to formulate what you were doing after? Was there somebody in particular, like a Betty White, who you looked at and you said, I could be that woman? And do you think it's more difficult to break into the industry now as opposed to then, or as opposed to when you started breaking into it?
Well, that's interesting. I didn't have a lot of prototypes because I'm a very bad type in the industry. I was never a pretty girl. I was always a character actress. And in my case, what that really means is ethnic looking, Jewy looking. It's not a good character. It's not a good look for a woman in Hollywood. Okay. Uh, my big breakthrough again was totally accidental. In 1991, my agent called and said, there's this new show. I don't know what's happening with it. There's a couple of lines, and one of our actresses, who at that time was a much better known than I was, she was offered it and she turned it down because it was just a couple of lines. She felt it was too small for her. And one of the themes of my book is always say, yeah, why not? You never know what something's in. I said, yeah, why not? I auditioned and I got it. And I did a couple of lines and I came home, and when the show aired, Benny, my husband, looked at it, he said, well, I don't get it. It's not about anything. And the show was Seinfeld. And my role became a recurring role of Doris Klompus in the Florida condo. And now my husband watches at least 2 or 3 episodes every single night. So again, this was totally accidental. And I did that recurring Doris Klompus, and they gave me a second role. I don't know how well you know the show. I'm the obnoxious airline passenger sitting next to Julia Louis-Dreyfus when she's stuck in coach, and Jerry is bumped up to first class. So my association with that show changed things for me. As soon as you could say in your resume, I did a recurring on Seinfeld, people treat you differently. So doors opened up and I started getting stuff. I still have not had a huge career as an actress, but I'm kind of known and respected enough in the business that once in a while, even, which is always a miracle, is that a producer will call my agent and say, is Annie available next week to do a funny bit on such and such a show? But that took a while for that to happen because I started late. And I want to say, by the way, about the woman who turned down the job. In the 4 or 5 episodes of Seinfeld that I did, I think I counted them. I have a total of 27 lines. And I have earned about a little, or maybe a little over $100,000 for that.
Nice.
Over the years.
Yeah.
This is since 91.
How are the
and I'm
royalty
still getting-
checks these days?
and
Like, they're
I'm
like
still
cents?
getting them. I'm still getting royalty checks, and once in a while, one is considerable. So again, it's like I say in my book, you know, you're never going to regret the things, how shall I say it? It's silly to regret the things that you did, but you're always going to regret the things you didn't do. That actress was wrong when she said, no, this is too small for me. I can't do it.
Yeah, it's all about
Right?
being right. You know I'm right. That's exactly what you were there. So in the 90s, were you recognized out in the street from the show?
No,
Never.
rarely.
Really?
My show, unless there are now, there are real Seinfeld fanatics who know every role. I have occasionally met somebody who not only knows my note, but knows my lines, who says my lines. You know, raincoats. Why does he bother you with those raincoats? You have nothing better to do. They beside my line. But what I do get recognized a lot now, and I have to say I love it because I'm an attention whore. I get recognized by my TikTok fans all the time, and I love that. And I'm amazed by it because they're young. A lot of them are young guys. A lot of them are young Black guys. A lot of them are white Christian. I mean, I never thought that I could reach such a diverse audience and also such a young audience. That's amazing to me. And they do stop me and could we take a selfie? I just went to Portland and both going and coming on the plane, the cabin crew came over. They said, excuse us, would you mind, could we get a selfie with you? Now, I love that stuff. I know real celebrities don't like to be bothered, but I don't consider myself a real celebrity. And I love the attention and I love the love. So I'm just very fortunate. And again, the TikTok thing was totally accidental. Totally, I don't know anything about TikTok. I can barely take a selfie. You saw me trying to figure out how to get the headphones in, right? I'm a techno moron.
So what's the deal with TikTok exactly here? I know Joe is not on TikTok at all. Our show is on TikTok because we have to be, but we're not big TikTok people. So
I'm
what
not
do you think
either.
about TikTok so much? Exactly, should Joe get on it? What was your reaction to really blowing up on TikTok? Was there a
Well,
specific video that you posted that kind of made
oh,
you
there's
go
one
viral?
video that has been seen by billions of people. As a matter of fact, a lot of my fans will stop me and they say, aren't you the Krispy Kreme lady? So you have to look for my Krispy Kreme that has literally been seen by billions of people. And again, totally accidental. I won't tell you what it's about, but it's Krispy Kreme. But the way it happened was I do something called storytelling, which is I like to tell a short personal humor story about my life. There are a lot of selling shows. I don't know if you know The Moth, if you've ever listened to The Moth. And that's really what I like to do best. I like to stand up in a theater, live, perform my own words. It's not stand up, but it's humor. Anyway, I have a young friend. She's 30 years old. I said, if I'm in LA and I do a storytelling show, if I'm lucky, there are 40 people in the audience. I wish I could find a larger audience. I think I have something to say. So I said to her, maybe I should shoot or get someone to shoot some small clips and put them on Instagram, which I personally have never used. And she's 30 and she goes, Instagram, that is so toxic. That is so last century. You have to be on TikTok. I said, are you crazy? TikTok is about young, pretty girls putting on makeup, shaking their booties. Who wants to see me on TikTok? And she said, trust me, you'll go viral. I will shoot them for you and post them. And again, I went to my mantra. I said, okay, yeah, why not? And I cannot explain to you why it blew up the way it did. The only thing I can tell you is people tell me that they use the word authentic. I'm not sure I understand what that means, but I am very honest about my opinions about things. And and I've been criticized for it all my life. All my life, I've been criticized for talking too much, for being too opinionated, for being too blunt about I've always apologized. I was told that's not an attractive quality in a woman. And now, in my dotage and my geezer years, I'm being celebrated for the exact same qualities that I was always criticized for. My young followers, they say, we love your opinions. We'd love to hear you talk. I want to be you. I want you to be my grandma, blah, blah, blah. So that's the story, Lori.
There you go. So you, I mean, you have told a lot of stories. You've had some great opportunities. You appeared in an episode of the Oprah Winfrey Show. You went on Dr. Phil to set the record straight about being old. So what are those experiences like for you?
I love them all. I mean, they're all challenging in some ways, but I like being out there. I like being celebrated. I'm a total egoist. I love talking about myself. What's not to like?
Yeah.
Sometimes you get nervous and sometimes you're not sure how it's going to go. I wasn't sure whether or not I should even do Dr. Phil because that's a whole other audience that I wasn't sure they would respond to me. But I do anything that anybody asks me to do, like this. I thought, okay, I don't know these guys. I'm not familiar with, but if they're interested
Two-way street.
in me, then I'm interested in them. Right?
Yes. Well, also, I have a special connection to anything that's Seinfeld. So anything that's Seinfeld kind of comes into my life because my dad's apartment number is 5A, like Jerry's in the show. So there was always that connection there. And I dated a girl once and her dog's name was Kramer. So
No.
again, it's just like, it just seems to flow in my direction. So, but our podcast is great because it started out as one thing and we've expanded slowly over time. And we are a younger demographic. So evidently everything that you're doing, kind of, you just don't appeal to somebody who's your age, right? You do appeal to people who are younger.
That seems to be happening. I never expected.
yeah.
By the way, if you're such a big Seinfeld fan, I should tell you that he is a very genuinely nice guy.
I'm
heard
sure
you
you
know that already.
I've heard he's
very
an unbelievably
respectful.
generous
Cass is treated well. We were fed well. There was a certain level of respect for everybody, and he would let me some of my lines are improvised, and on some shows you can't do that because the writer wants every word. But here, at one point, I don't remember what it was. I improvised a moment, and Jerry called Larry over. He said, "Larry, did you see what Annie just said? I like that. Let's keep that in the script." That's very nice for an actor, and it's very generous for the star of the show to give to somebody who's essentially a bit player. You know,
Well, he's a comedian at heart, and anybody who does that kind of stuff knows that sometimes the best work is improvising and ad-libbing.
absolutely.
Something that's not really, because again, what is it? It's not authentic. You are authentic. You need to be your authentic self to get the most out of you.
You're a genius. I love you. I'll marry you. Okay. All right.
I don't know if your husband's going to be too happy about that.
Wait, are you kidding? He's going to be overjoyed.
Oh, Lord.
I married my husband. We met on a blind date in February, and we got married in April because my husband's Danish and he needed his green card. It was a green card wedding.
Oh.
And my friends all said, "You're marrying a total stranger. What are you going to do? He'll get his papers. You'll never see him again." I said, "No, I don't think so. I think this is real." So I married a total stranger, and that was 59 years ago. So I'm ready for a change. Enough already.
Annie, any advice for Joe on how he could potentially meet his soulmate?
Oh, well, I know that nowadays people do it through the apps, people do it online. I like that old-fashioned thing of what I did, of a friend knows somebody, because your
Right.
friends know you. But also, I really think you have to keep doing what interests you, and then you might meet other people with those same interests. But I had to tell you something that I think is wrong about how people date right now. It seems to me that when they write about themselves and they describe themselves, I like this, I like sports, I like burgers and beer, or I like the opera, I like fine French cuisine, whatever, that the implication is that you're looking for somebody with the same taste. And I don't think that's necessarily a rule for a good partnership. My husband and I have very little in common. We don't like the same food. We don't like the same TV shows. He's a morning person. I'm a late night person. But there are basic things that we like together. And I think people make the mistake of looking for a clone. Does that resonate with you in any way?
No, I agree with that. I think it's all about balance. So
Yeah.
it's like you need, I guess, chocolate and vanilla ice cream together, you know? I mean, I don't know if that's the best comparison
Yin
off
and
the top of my
yang.
head. Right. Yin and yang.
Yes, I do think so. You don't want a twin. You don't want a clone.
I think that's good advice. I will certainly follow it. Listen, I'm
Look for
changing.
your opposite. Check out your opposite.
Okay. Well, the reason why this show works is that, you know, on a basic level, I think Nick and I we like the same things, but personality wise, appearance wise, there are differences there. So I think
Okay.
when we're doing the interviews, I think certain questions work if I ask them, certain questions work if he asks them.
Oh,
But everybody notices the difference. You know, I get a lot of people compliment us and say, you know, you guys are like oil and vinegar, you like salt and pepper, right?
nice.
So on a very basic level, I think that translates to the podcast.
You're very fortunate. How many years have you been doing this?
Over 3 years now.
Yeah.
See, I envy you that because sad to say, I've not had great luck in working with friends. As a matter of fact, even sadder, I've lost some friendships over it. And that's why now I ended up just doing solo shows. I thought I don't want to lose any more friends. I'll just, if I have to complain about someone in the cast, I complain about myself. But it's a very tricky thing that you're doing. It is a tough balancing act. And I congratulate you that you have found a way to do it and not step on each other's toes and not cause any resentments. I was not able to do that. I'm sad to confess that.
Well, like any great partnership, there's a balancing of duties, and I think we do that very, very well. You know, we appreciate the kind words. Let's talk about your book. You showed it up at the very, very beginning. Talk about your book.
Yeah.
Talk about the process of writing it, how writing it was maybe different than other things that you've done, and where can we find it?
Well, it's called The Book of Annie, Hard Humor and Chutzpah from the Accidental Influencer. It's on Amazon. It's in some bookstores. And you can also get the audio version at Audible. And I read it myself. So the voice you're hearing now is the voice of the book. And can you believe they wanted me to audition for it? I said, it's the Book of Annie. Who are you going to get? Helen Mirren? I the book came as a result of my TikTok notoriety because publishers want somebody who's already got a ready-made audience, clearly. And so what I've done is I've taken a lot of what I talk about on TikTok and just expanded it to humorous essays. And most of them are about my life, but in ways that I hope are universal. I've gone through some things that I hope are universal for everybody, like career ups and downs, like marital ups and downs, like, oh, a big thing. And I didn't know this was a thing. I've always been a thrifter because I was brought up poor and I was always taught not to waste money. So I live very well without spending money. And I've written a lot about that. I didn't know that now thrifting is a whole new trendy thing with young people. Shopping at thrift stores, shopping at yard sales, you know, that kind of thing. So the book is really humorous essays and some tiny observations as life the way I see it. And I think I have some wisdom to share, and I hope it's entertaining.
There you go. So if social media was more of a thing, bigger when you were younger, how do you think you would have used it?
Uh, well, I think, you know, I guess what everyone does now, if you want to use social media to share what's attractive about yourself, I guess. Is
Yeah,
is that true? Um,
definitely.
with me, it's a little different because what I'm using is I actually feel, if this doesn't sound too braggy, I really feel that I have something to say. I'm not going to use social media to show how to put on makeup because I want my content. If I'm a content creator, I want my content to have some meaning, to maybe help people see things in a different way. So that I guess I would have used it the same way I'm using it now, but better. I still can't figure out. I don't get Instagram, quite frankly. I don't understand why you want to scroll through looking at pictures. I'm a word person. So do you guys, I'm sure you both use Instagram a lot, right? I mean,
Certainly,
I just joined it and I tried putting things
certainly
on.
use Instagram more than TikTok. TikTok, I don't get. I don't know. I'm not a
But
big.
what do you, but I don't understand what you look for on Instagram. Just people of pictures cats or people of pictures
Um,
vacations or
it's
I don't,
It's a
it's
I
lot of
don't,
it's a
it's
lot of Trump,
videos, it's
right?
Instagram, it's promotional tool.
Right. It's a lot of product placement, tropical locations, scandalous women, and food and food. And Nick is a huge foodie. So
oh,
because
but
he's
the
a
TikTok food things I understand are great. I
right,
don't look at any of them, but I mean, I've seen a few of the TikTok food things I think might be worth taking a look at, Nick. Uh,
I mean,
yeah, I'm not
really,
sure I
for the
understand.
most
And
part,
what about Twitter?
anything you get on TikTok, you could probably get on Instagram. They all copy each other, so
right.
it's
I
all the
think
same.
I think what separates TikTok though is that I think number one, people want short videos that are like 10 to 30 seconds, 10 to 40 seconds.
Yeah,
They
mine are
want
longer.
they
Mine are
want
longer.
like a little production to them. And I do think that they want like that authenticity. And it's very easy on TikTok just to watch something quick, watch something quick, watch something quick. So in
Yeah.
half hour, 45 minutes, you're scrolling through something, people are more likely, I think, to just stumble on something, especially if they're on a topic related to the stuff that you do as a content creator.
Well, I'll tell you what I do use, and you're gonna laugh because you're probably too young. I use Facebook
No,
all the
I'm all
time.
over Facebook. Joe's not a
You
Facebook guy, but I'm all over it. I love Facebook.
I use it all the time, and I'll tell you what I use it for recently. I have a friend who has had an undiagnosable disease for the last 3.5 years. No one knows what's wrong with him. He's had a million tests. He's had gone to a million doctors. No one can figure out what's wrong with him. So I went on Facebook and I said, I have a friend with a blah, 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 blah. Does anyone know a genius diagnostician? And a woman wrote, and yes, this is the man your friend should go to. He went to him. The guy immediately diagnosed what it was, immediately got him on a vacation. Immediately his life has totally, totally changed. So I don't know how you would do that on Twitter. I don't know how you would do that on Instagram or TikTok, but on Facebook, you can do that.
Yeah, I love Facebook in regards to that type of stuff. There's always a place for us social media, and you need to be on it if you're in any sort of business to promote yourself. So that's just the reality of the way things are right now. Annie, for you in your life or your career, and maybe you touched on this earlier with the Seinfeld stuff, but what would you say is your you know I'm right moment? What I mean by that is a time or place where you wanted to pursue something, you ask somebody for advice, they tell you, don't do that, it's an awful idea. And you were like, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. And in the end, ultimately, you will see why it is that I'm right.
That's a very complicated and challenging question, and I actually have an answer for it. Everybody thinks they're an expert. In the whole world, everyone thinks they're an expert on everything. And what I say, I'm not the only one, a lot of people in showbiz say it. Basically, no one knows anything. There are no rules. Now, the rule in LA, going back to my Seinfeld experience, the rule in LA is don't ever take a job as a bit player. Because if you do, you're going to be stuck in that category forever, which is why that actress did not take that role. When I got offered it, I thought the wisdom is I should not take this job. I have many friends who wouldn't, but I never say no to anything, and I did, and it changed my life. So that I think you should think twice before listening to the experts. We each know what works for us, you know, and something that might make sense to somebody else or to the whole world. Look, there are a lot of things that are very popular that I have no interest in. I'm just trying to think of something offhand. I can't think of what it is. Barbecue parties, the American thing of the barbecue. I don't like barbecue. I don't like please don't invite me and give me hamburgers and hot dogs. I'm too sophisticated. I'm too health conscious. I do it because it's the American way.
Unfortunately, we can't get married because I'm born on the 4th of July. It's my favorite day. You're out.
No, I
Sorry.
like the parties. I'll go to the parties, but have something for the to me, a hot dog, it's like salt, fat, and chemicals. I'm not going to put that in my mouth. I mean, I do because I cheat. I'm not that strict, but I just mean that there are a lot of popular things that you as an individual may not love as much as everybody else. And I think you just have to be yourself. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Have you ever had a time when you were challenged to do something that everybody does and you thought, well, no, I'm not really comfortable with that. Can you think of a time when you've done that? I think everybody can. And the older you are, it's one of the good things about growing older. The easier it is to say no. When you're young, you want to be popular, you want to be liked. Now I don't give a and and I don't do what I'm not happy, what I'm not comfortable with. When I was younger, people asked me to go camping. I knew I didn't want to go camping. I knew it would be a disaster. But I didn't want everyone to know how afraid I was of nature. So I went, I got poison ivy, I didn't sleep, I had the worst time imaginable. Now, if you would ask me, hey, Annie, a bunch of us are going camping, I would say, it's so sweet of you to think of me, but that doesn't really work for me.
Great
A good
advice.
TikTok though. If you go and camp at 85 years old.
That's right. Maybe I should do it as a freak show. Or maybe I could do, don't they have something called glamping? Where you go and
Yes.
it's all very,
Glamorous camping, right?
Yes, glamorous camp. Yeah,
what's
that's
it
funny.
called?
Glamping,
Glamorous
got it right.
camping. Annie, we thank
Also,
you.
you guys are,
Oh.
I'm sorry, we're ending.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
No, aren't you guys, don't you talk a lot about sports?
We do.
Some sports. We haven't
See, I
done,
don't know
we do
anything about
everything.
sports. I've never played a sport. I've never
I was gonna
understood
say you
sports.
probably don't give a rat's ass about sports, do you?
I don't know anything about sports, but at one point in my life, I had a boyfriend who liked the Knicks. That's how old I am. And we would go to Madison Square Garden to watch the Knicks. And I have to say, I found that thrilling. I found it thrilling because the men were beautiful. Baseball players, they have these fat ass, they're not gorgeous looking. The men were beautiful and it was fast. And you had the satisfaction of seeing the ball come into the thing. My husband's Danish, so he watches soccer, which they call football. You can sit there for 2 hours and maybe there's 1 or 2 goals in the whole 2 hours. What is the fun of that? Just see these guys running back and forth, running back and forth. I don't get it. Do you?
Well, it's the cheapest sport to play in the world because all you need is a ball and just some space, right? So
Oh,
that's
I never thought of that. I
that's
never
why
thought of
it's
that.
super popular. It's the world's game. A quality sport at the highest level is going to be entertaining, right? So that applies to soccer. I think this country, we love baseball, even though it's getting like less popular here. But that's why everybody gravitates to football because it's action, but that's some stoppage, action, stoppage. It's enough. It's easy to follow. Everybody knows the biggest players because they're treated like
Yeah.
celebrities and everything.
Right,
So
they certainly are. I can't watch it. I can't watch anything. It's like boxing. I can't watch anything where there's a chance of somebody being seriously injured. And we know what's happening to those football players and their brains. I can't do it. I'm thin-skinned. At the Olympic, oh, I do watch though sometimes. What is it at the Olympics? Who's that great? Beals.
Swimming?
Simone
The
Biles,
gymnastic.
the gymnastics, yeah.
I can't not watch her because I don't know how any human being has that kind of strength and control over their body. That to me is amazing. I do watch that.
We've had some swimmers on with us, and Nick had the opportunity to interview an Olympian. So that's one
Whoa,
that we follow as well. Yeah. But yeah, we're a
that's
sports podcast. We were started as a sports podcast, but then we really expanded on everything since then. So we've had entertainers, musicians have been on with us, comedians have been on with us, a lot of reality TV stars. So we're not just sports anymore. So
all right. Now I'm going to ask you something. I want you to give me an honest, authentic answer. But aren't I the most charming that you've had?
oh, absolutely. Nick, what do you think? I
He gave me a thumbs up, everybody. If you're not seeing this, I got 2 thumbs up. just like from Ebert, what was it?
Ebert and
Siskel
Ebert
and
and
Roper.
Roper.
Yep. Annie,
Okay,
we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. This podcast
I
is
love being
doing
here.
really, really well. We could plug your book one more time. What we do here is we always give our guests the last word. So you've shared a lot of wisdom with us that we're appreciative for. If there's anything else you would like to share or promote for yourself, by all means, go ahead. If you want to plug the book one more time, go ahead. But we thank you for your
Oh,
time.
okay, I can do that. It's the Book of Annie. You can read it or listen to it. The Book of Annie, Humor, Heart, and Chutzpah from an Accidental Influencer. I think you'll have a good time. You'll cry, you'll laugh, and you might even think a little bit. Does that
There you
sound like a
go.
good
Let's
commercial?
show off the book one last time as we have it with you. If you're watching, as you are. Andy, this has been great. Thank you so much for your time. And that's going to do it here for this episode of You Know I'm Right. For our very special guest, Andy Korzen, for my co-host, Joe Calabrese. I'm Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.